Welcome to the Newton County Insider Podcast, where the outsider gets the inside scoop on all things Newton County and the surrounding areas. All right, got Matt Gibson on the show with us today. Welcome.
How you doing? Thank you.
Doing good, man. Appreciate you doing this and coming on here.
Yeah. First time, so
Yeah?
we'll see.
All right. Well, I'm not very experienced either, so we'll struggle through it together. I just want to start out with, tell me who Matt Gibson is.
Lifelong resident of Morocco, Indiana. I've moved. My joke is I've moved 3 times in my life, each time a quarter mile. So I've always lived near our family farm, which is a little closer to Mount Air than the town of Morocco. Lived there with my parents. Built a house right before I was born in 1976. My mother's from Lake Village. My dad grew up in Mount Air as well. Always on the farm and around farming. I knew from a very early age that's what I was going to do. Always thought I'd do something else as well, which my dad told me if I wanted to come back to the farm, I had to go to college, and I said, well, only way I'm going to college if I get to play a sport. And I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to play some sports. So
Right on. I see, did a little research, political science degree?
Yep, political science. I really was pretty immature when I got to college. Kind of struggled my freshman year there. Didn't take it real serious. High school had been, let's just say I wasn't as challenged as I should have been maybe. I was kind of on an honors diploma path, and I wasn't able my junior year to get into Spanish 3. She didn't think I'd done well enough in Spanish 2, which she was right. So that was going to throw me out of the honors degree. So I decided I would not take the calculus and all the physics and things that you had to finish that degree. So my last couple of years in high school were pretty simple.
Gotcha.
A lot of shop, a lot of ag class.
Yeah.
Got my core degree. Still graduated near the top of my class, and then like I said, my dad said I had to go to college, so put my name out there a little bit. And Coach Knutson was our coach at the time, and he did a great job. This is before cell phones and social media and the internet or anything like that. So we actually filled out papers, and he had a triple deck VHS player, so we could make. He would play the main tape, and then you could copy 3 at a time. And I think he made about 200 tapes for me to send out to colleges. And this is a big vanilla envelope. And I remember getting called. I got about 200 letters between my junior and senior year from schools of all sizes all over the country, but places I'd never even heard of. My mom kept them all in a file cabinet. I mean, the cabinet was full by the time I was a senior. And, and a lot of those places were not places you wanted to go, but there were some of them that, they send a lot of shots out, and they're not really recruiting you, but you get put on the list, you get a chance, maybe you get to go visit the campus or something. And so we did a half a dozen visits. I remember going in the first coach's office, and he literally had VHS tapes stacked to the ceiling and all the way around the thing. I'm like, well, how is he ever going to watch all these things? And now, my kids complain about picture quality on our high-speed internet digital screen TV, and we were sending out these tapes, and everything had lines through it, and they're blurry, and or the kid holding the camera was shaking the whole time, and so just to think of where things have gone from then. We didn't have an email address back then, so you literally communicated with a letter.
Right.
Our kids don't even understand that.
Yeah.
I think my mother writes cursive very well, and my kids were asking her, "What is that?" And
Yeah.
like, wow. So things have changed a lot, but I got a chance to go play college football, and they at Valparaiso University. I chose it simply because it was within an hour of the farm. That was my rules were with my dad. I had to play football, and I had to be within an hour of the farm. And I got a full ride scholarship to St. Joe College in Rensselaer, and they terminated their entire football coaching staff right before Christmas. So we're total limbo, whether,
Wow.
the new staff wasn't all back in place till early to late winter. And so I finally got a call back from them in June after I'd already committed to Valpo. And Valpo was Division I non-scholarship. We played some Division I scholarship schools, got to travel all over the country, had some really neat games, very memorable games. We played Yale at Soldier Field.
Wow.
We got the Bears locker room. We were the home team. And my dad had made friends with the coaches, and so he was one of the dads that got invited in the locker room, and he that was really cool for him.
It was a perk for him. Huh?
Oh yeah. I mean, they had all the nostalgia of Walter Payton, Butkus, Ditka, all those guys. All that stuff was in there. So very, very cool experience. And we got to play with the last football game to play at the Buccaneer Stadium in Tampa. So we literally played there on a Saturday. They had a soccer game on Sunday, and Monday they demolitioned. Yeah, when we played, it was called the Big Sombrero. I think it was one of the biggest stadiums in the country, 102 or 108,000 people it could seat. And you could walk to the top of I didn't get a chance to do it, but our fans did. You walk to the top of the stadium, and you could look over into the new Buccaneer Stadium that's there now. So, yeah, pretty neat to be the last game to play there. Played South Florida, and when the school had signed the contract with South Florida, they were supposed to just be starting to build their Division I program. And so they literally had started scratch the year we signed the contract. So we'd have been the third year of their program. We thought we'd match up pretty well with them. Well, that year, Florida State got a new coach, and he cut 28 full scholarship players loose, and South Florida picked him up right away. And there's a big difference between a Division I full scholarship athlete and a Division I AA non-scholarship athlete. I mean, we were very outmatched, but it was a good game. I think they played the university a lot of money to come down there and beat us up, and we got to stay a couple extra days in Florida. So very memorable. That was a great trip.
Probably a little easier to recruit in Florida than it is up here in Indiana too.
It's a lot of the recruitment out of Valpo, even though it's a Lutheran university, they honestly recruited really heavily out of the Chicago and Milwaukee Catholic leagues. Oh, so which, not to get into religion too much, but the irony between Lutherans recruiting Catholics, and I'm Methodist, so I got along with everybody. But at times on university that those topics would come up at times. But we had a lot of big boys that came out of those big inner city leagues.
I believe it. So that's awesome. I seen that you were also a all conference baseball player in high school as well.
I was. So my senior year, Mr. Atwood, who we lost him to COVID. Great guy, really was. He had always been in my time at high school. He had been Coach Knutsen's assistant coach, whether it was football or baseball. And so after our junior year in football, we were very successful. Basically played the ultimate state champions down at West Lafayette. They had a guy on their team named Chike O'Keefer, who went on to have a very illustrious career in the NFL. But he started for Purdue as a true freshman. Dang. So just to think, 10 months before that day, there's little old junior 180-pound me out there blocking this guy who he had 28 tackles and 280 yards rushing against us. Yeah. And we hung in there. I think we only lost by 9 points, but that was a really cool game. Had 3 or 4 television folks there. They brought in extra bleachers. I think we took like 13 fan buses to the game. Wow. Just things that one of the reasons I've got back into coaching and some of the stuff at North Newton is so much of that stuff is just lost on these kids. Like they don't know what it's like to look into the stands and not see a single inch of bleacher. They're full. Yeah. Every inch of the fence all the way around the field had folks on it. We'd have 30 parents get up in the morning on Friday and cook us this huge breakfast. And, same thing Thursday night. We'd have a monstrous meal, and the boosters were everywhere, and they're just everyone wanted to be part of a winning program. Yeah. And that's been one of my motivations is, my now ex-wife, but she and I get along very well. We both decided when our kids were about 7th grade, I said, we're going to invest a lot of time and see if we can make a difference. If not, then unfortunately we're going to be one of the statistics. We're going to pull our kids and take them to a school where they can be successful, be on a program that has the things they need, goes the places they need to go, has the coaches that support them. And fortunately, the athletic director, Sam Zachary, kind of got behind me, and we made some changes out there, and we got some new blood in, and we've got some really good young coaches. And God bless these guys. They work for almost free, and that's a whole nother topic, but they are truly there for the love of the game, the love of the sport, working with these kids. our head football coach, John Ewan, I can't say enough good things about him. He's at the school early. He's there at almost 6:00 every night for some reason, whether it's weights. He travels to go watch the basketball and the volleyball and all the other sports in the winter. He doesn't have to do that.
Yeah.
He wants to do that. And his assistant coaches, Josh Smith and same deal. Josh works out at the school full time. He's actually a teacher. So I can't remember what subjects he's teaching, a couple different ones, but
yeah.
He's now the head track coach. He's the second assistant varsity football coach, and these guys are just invested.
Yeah.
We got Coach Ed in the weight room. I mean, he literally is out there working for free. He loves it. He's very fortunate. His wife has a very good job and supports his love for the sport. So, I mean, on his own, he's coming to school at 5 a.m. and opening up for different sports all winter long that want to come in and lift before school, and he's there till 6:00 at night. Wow. It's just crazy. Like I live 2 miles away, and I don't want to be. I don't want to. He lives in Hobart. He's driving 45 miles each way. So,
wow.
So just some really good guys that have really bought in all the way, all the sports year round. Today the weather didn't work out, but we were going to just spring break basically starts for most of us. It's starting tomorrow, but technically it's next week. So we thought the end of the first week of practice, we're going to have a baseball. We're going to have a little scrimmage, make it fun. So who'd I ask? I asked Coach Ed and Coach Ewing. I'm like, hey, you guys come out and umpire my baseball game? Absolutely. Tell us what time to be there. So very
next
cool.
time you do that, call me. I just got certified to ump.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
All right. Well, there we go.
Yeah.
Well, that means I can complain then.
Yeah. Well, that's fine. I haven't quite figured out how to deal with complaining people yet, so it might be a rough go.
Yeah. I've seen it all. I've seen umpires who get really engaged in the audience.
Yeah.
I've been guilty of being that audience member a few times that got engaged, and other times they're completely oblivious of it. They do their thing. And honestly, as a parent and as a coach, if you're consistently bad, I can live with that. Or if you're consistently one way or another, I can live with that. When it seems like you're sort of just making it up as you go, oh boy, I have a really short fuse for that.
Yeah.
So
got to call it both ways too.
Yeah, I mean, if and umpires, we had an umpire and I wasn't coaching, I was just a parent. We had an umpire up in Crown Point a few years ago who had and he was older. I mean, he had to be 70 or older. Very obvious visual problem. Okay. Like, I don't know what it was for sure, but if the ball was literally 2 feet to the outside of the plate, it was a strike.
Yeah. If
that ball came dead center, ball every time. And I mean, I'm sitting literally right behind the plate, and everybody can see both teams' coaches saying, "Can you see that?" I'm like, yeah. And I mean, he turns around and you can see, I'm like, his eyes are definitely not focusing here.
That's awesome. My kid just played his first travel ball game, an exhibition game. What night was that? Tuesday night. And the ump, in my opinion, made a bad call. And so after that inning was over, I was like, hey, what was the deal with that call at second base? He goes, I just didn't see it. I'm like, appreciate the honesty. Yeah. Like, that's cool. Like,
now at times, my boy's been travel ball for 3 years, and most time, did they only have one umpire?
Yep.
Yeah. So part of, I didn't know this, when you're a head coach, you got to go to like 10 times as many meetings as just being a coach.
Yeah.
So one of the meetings we had to go to was the organization of all the local umpires for high school sports. And the head of our region is a guy named Larry Babcock. And he said they are so short on umpires that the only games they're going to guarantee 2 umpires for are varsity games. And if they're not a conference game, we still may only get one umpire. So it's going to be tough. They need, I forget what he said, like 300 more or something in the region to cover all the games. He assigns for everything from Little League through varsity.
Yeah.
But
That's wild. So the umpire clinic that I went through was up at the Reps facility in Shelby. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that or not.
Yeah, in Shelby, Indiana.
Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So went up there and sat through it, and same message, like super short on umpires. Yeah. And the reason I was there is just looking for an opportunity to give back and help out, because you go to any small town community and constantly struggling for a qualified. Other than just like the random parent in the crowd, right?
Parent or kid or whatever. Yep. Most of the towns have gone to trying to hire high school kids and stuff. And they do okay, but, they're still 14, 15-year-old kids. And unfortunately, you get some parents who don't understand that all the time. I've seen coaches not understand all the time.
Yeah. So. No, for sure. Well, so we kind of dove into it already a little bit, but today just wanted to talk through the youth sports, farming, and school district stuff. And so the IndianaRBI.com put out an article today about you stepping up as the new head coach for the North Newton Spartans. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I can't remember the guy's name, Mr. Kraft, I think. Apparently, your name goes on a list to the whole area when you get hired. I've been contacted by a couple different groups and asked to do an interview, and always a little skeptical over my years in politics and various things. You know, you read the interview after you've given the interview, and you don't remember a lot of the things in there. But I thought he did a very good job. It was I'm pretty flattering, honestly. He got a lot of things really correct and accurate. He was very. I had to go get my roster at one point and make sure we spelled all the kids' names properly. And then it was pretty neat in his article. The players' names are linked to their stats and stuff. Oh. And so that was pretty nice of him. But yeah, basically, I knew last year's head coach was going to retire. I think, his son was done, had seniored out. So I'd said something to the athletic director in the fall. I said, while we're searching for the new head coach, if this winter, need help with workouts or anything, let me know. Because I'm the head junior high football coach, I've already got all the clearance and the keys and all, everything, so I can get into school when I need to. And so as spring came on, my son came home and said, "Dad, they're going to have a call out." I said, "Oh, they got a coach." He said, "No, one of the teachers is doing it." And so, "Are they wanting to coach?" He said, "No, she's not wanting to coach. She just thought she'd see how many players want to come out." So I called the athletic director, and he invited me to come in and talk. He says, "I haven't had any applications." He said they had one application, but the guy had applied. He'd sent his resume to North Newton and to a couple other schools, and he was from up north somewhere around Whiting, I think, and he ended up getting offered a job within a few miles of his house, which I would take over driving 50 miles every day and one way, So we talked for a little bit, and I said, "Well, I will do it. I'll do the best I can. If in the event the next month, somebody walks through the door that is qualified and we think is going to do a good job, I will step aside in a heartbeat, But I'm kind of all in at this point. I went to all the meetings. I got all the certifications. So, I've checked those boxes. There's a lot of administrative stuff with the head job. I mean, I'm picking out uniforms and gear and, rosters and coordinating who's got physicals and, things like that, and parents' questions and, and I've got some great assistant coaches. So when I played, Bob Gonzi was a very young teacher, maybe in his second or third year out at North Newton. He and Maury Wiseman had actually been my Little League baseball coach or Babe Ruth baseball coaches. So I'd known him forever. So I kind of walked out of the athletic director's office stunned, knew I was going to be in really big trouble at home because I'm pretty sure my fiance said as I walked out the door, "Do not come home with a head coaching job." So I was walking down the hallway and I bumped into Bob and I said, "Would you like to be my assistant coach?" And he looked at me and says, "Yeah, I would." And I think he went home and thought about it a little bit and thought, "What the heck have I done?" And, both of us were taught by the same two guys, Doug Knutson and Mike Atwood, and another guy named Willie Wellhausen. I referenced in that article the World War II veteran, and that was Willie Wellhausen. Really neat side story about him. He had gotten a full scholarship to Iowa in 3 sports back in those days. He was going to play football, track, and baseball, and so got drafted. Got his draft papers. So the military works for those guys, so they put him on a ship out in the middle of the ocean as far from conflict as he could get. Just do your time. We'll get you back to university. And the anchor chain broke or something happened with the anchor chain on the boat and broke his back.
No way.
And so he never got to fill those scholarship dreams, and back in those days, if you got to play, in the Big Ten, you probably were going to get a chance in the NFL. It was a really small league back at that time, or Major League Baseball, anything. So who knows?
Yeah.
So, Willie went on and got his degree, and I think he taught, I can't remember, industrial arts or something like that. I'm not sure what subject he taught, but but he coached, and he was the guy at the end of practice decided how much you were going to run. His favorite was a ladder, a bear crawl ladder, every 5 yards,
Oof.
up and back, full pads on the football field.
Wow.
So he was totally the year that we did so well in football. My junior year, fall of '93, he was in charge of getting us in shape, and we won a lot of early games, not because we were more talented, but because we were just in better shape.
You didn't
when
quit in the fourth quarter?
When the guys ran out of gas, we still had gas in the tank, and I give him a lot of credit for that. And he knew his stuff, but times were starting to change a little bit, and that old hardcore kind of military colonel type approach to sports was starting to not be cool anymore. And when I got to college, we were down to one coach there. His name's Robin Hansen. Really, really good guy. Facebook friends with him now. My mom came down my sophomore year, I think, after the game, the sideline. She says, "Why does that man hate you?" And so I went to his office, during college there, in the middle of the day. I said, "Mr. Hansen," I said, Coach Hansen, I don't know what I've done to you, or what I have to do to make you happy, but my mom was really worried that you're going to kill me. Just a very boisterous, big, giant man, could hear all of his enthusiasm from the sideline, word for word in the stands. And he said, "I don't know what you're talking about. You're one of my favorite players." I'm like, "Well, I would really hate to be on your crap list then, man."
Yeah.
So, he and I I said, "Well, I respond really well to just telling me what you like to do and kind of, a civil voice. You really don't have to come at me like we're about to fight."
Yeah.
And that's just the school he grew up. He played football in college and stuff in the 60s. And they would just start to put face masks that covered your whole face. And
Right.
so, I mean, he was just a tough guy, old school. And he came around, and I really enjoyed him. We had a really good rapport by the end of college. And like I said, we're Facebook friends now, which, that's my generation is Facebook. My kids think I'm old because I'm on that. I don't even have any of the other apps.
Yeah, I try to avoid all that. That's a whole different other ball game there.
Yeah, that's what. And as part of that interview, one my X account. I'm like, what's that? He said, "Well, I'll follow you on baseball on X." I'm like, "Well, so you're gonna have to show me how to do that, I guess."
The school better get somebody to run that, huh?
Yeah, I need an IT department.
There you go. All right. Well, I appreciate all that info. I'm curious, what goals do you have for the program?
When I came out to the school 3 years ago, I took over the junior high football program. I think we had 17 kids. After school started, I made it really well known to anybody that wanted to come out at any point, we'd take them. So I think we got our numbers up to about 23. But, there's already some kids that had been in the program long enough that they had just picked up a lot of really bad habits. And, I had a half a dozen kids that just couldn't get to practice, or if they came, they were, kind of their own sideshow at times, needed special attention. And then ironically, those kids were the ones that became ineligible academically, of course. So, that my goal going into year 2 was to, recruit. We turned over the high school program. I mean, that year they only had like 17 or 18 guys in the whole varsity game. They forfeited a couple of games because not enough kids showed up. And, and that was one of the things I sat down with Coach Ewing. I was on the committee to hire the new head coach. I don't know if that's normal, but I told him I will be on the committee to help hire the new head coach here. And they obliged, and myself and the athletic director and Mrs. Decker, all interviewed some folks, and Coach Ewing definitely brought the most energy. His knowledge of football is off the charts. And one of the things I told him, I said, I don't believe in leaving anybody behind, but unfortunately I'm afraid some of this upper class is, these are the kids who had their season cut short with COVID, and they had all these different things, all this baggage, and it wasn't their fault. They're kids. But I said, I'm afraid these kids are going to be a major distraction for kind of getting this program where we want it. Because, they're used to just letting the coach know when they'll be at practice or when they won't, when they'll play, and, where they'll play. And I witnessed this from the junior high sidelines watching the varsity games. I'm like, this is unacceptable. But and that's what I told Coach Ewing. I'm like, this is what you're getting. I said, now, give me another year at junior high. The kids will start pumping in there in a couple of years, or we went back and just thought, hey, in junior high, every kid plays. Everyone needs to learn the basic fundamentals of football. We do a lot of just really basic technique work, a lot of real boring stuff. But kids know how to protect themselves. They know their proper alignments. They know stance. Things like that. And by the end of the season, we try to make it a little more exciting and start to throw some fun plays in. And you get your kids that get it faster than other ones, and you're able to kind of expand your football vocabulary. But so Coach Ewing battled through that first year and, had barely 16, 17 kids. And, I had asked the athletic director to cancel the varsity season.
Wow.
I said, let's just play a JV schedule. Says make a big deal out of it. We'll booster it up. We'll get the band out there. We will make JV super special and get, I said, because here's the problem. We're going to be perpetually in a situation where we're playing freshman and sophomore and varsity games, and those kids are hurt.
Yeah.
And so this year we had better numbers, got up close to 32, 33 numbers on varsity. Of that, 18 of them were freshmen that had come out of my program. So very proud of that fact. And the freshman class is a very tight class. Those kids, tonight I saw them all in the weight room. Out of those 18 guys, they've recruited 3 or 4 more, so probably 20, 25 guys in that freshman class are in a weight room or in a sport year-round, putting in the time. They, there's probably 6 or 8 kids in that class that will play a college sport somewhere, and a couple of them we've got high hopes could be Division I athletes.
That's fantastic.
And I mean, they're working that hard, and these kids they've bought all in. They get it. They understand hard work equals results. The JV football team went undefeated in our conference this year, and not only did they go undefeated, they destroyed our JV opponents in conference. And kind of tough deal. We would lose on Friday night pretty handily at the varsity level, but then either Saturday or the following Monday we would just destroy them. And those kids they've tasted blood, and they want it. And they this year, I've got high hopes. You always think you can win all your games, but if we don't go at least 500 to 700 this year on the season compared to our conference at the varsity level, then we coaches are doing something wrong. So really excited about that. And Coach Ewing's super excited. He knows what he's got. We really believe in 2 years from now that we're going really deep in the playoffs. I mean, that's how confident we are in this group of athletes. They work that hard, and it's contagious.
Yeah,
so,
fantastic.
Yeah.
I was supposed to have him on the podcast yesterday, actually.
Oh, in the storm deal,
yeah, and he was double booked and had a couple things going on, but I'm hoping he'll reschedule and get him on here to talk about some of the program stuff he's got going on too. And that's a nice segue into the next question I had for you. You talked not leaving any kids behind and stuff like that, and so I'm just curious, what are you doing to get? And this is on the baseball front. So with your new program, and maybe you don't have an answer yet, and that's okay. But what are you doing to try and make sure you get the youth involved, or the travel ball kids that eat, sleep, breathe baseball? What are you doing at your level to try and bring those kids into the program?
Yeah, one of my junior high football parents reached out to me today and want to know what the next, the kid's done with Little League. What's the next step? Where do they go? Who do they talk to? And when I played, we had a very productive round robin Little League program in every town. Morocco, we had 4 Little League teams, and Kentland and Goodland, and we didn't really travel. We'd play 12 games here in town, and then we'd make an all-star team out of those 4 teams, and we'd go play all-star games against Lake Village and Brook and Goodland and all these different places. And now the numbers are down, so they're trying to get a team together, and then they're playing. So all of those towns are playing kind of round robin Little League. But currently, I think Roselawn's getting something together this year for basically Babe Ruth age. But one of the reasons I ended up in travel ball with my boys is, we got down to Little League, and there's a 2-year gap before the school takes over again. So basically, your junior high years, there hasn't been something locally at a very competitive level that kids could jump right into after Little League. So unfortunately, we're one of the statistics. Had to go north. We could have gone south, but then you got the time change to deal with. So we went north, so we stayed on the same time. Crown Point, there's several different travel ball clubs in Crown Point that do a very good job, and kind of met a coach. His name's Chad Wiersma. He played his college baseball over at Olivet Nazarene. He had boys about the same age as my boys, and so I spoke to him. I'm like, look, I farm, so I can't be 300 miles away every weekend. He said, oh, no, we don't do that. All of our tournaments are going to be within a 40 to 50 mile radius of Crown Point. And I thought, okay, here we go. We'll see. And he did. He really held to it. I think we played 7 tournaments in Crown Point and 3 in Kankakee, 1 in Rensselaer, and the Cup, each week we'd do one, like an Indianapolis tournament or one big trip to Sandusky. But for the most part, played close, and I can beat a Crown Point from my house in 29 minutes. So, it takes me 25 to go to Rensselaer. So it's not like that was a long stretch. Same to Kankakee. I go to Kankakee all the time. So that was pretty local, and it's been really successful. And what I wanted to see is a little bit more competition. Nothing wrong with town ball, anything like that. But you have to try out for the team.
Yeah.
And not everybody makes it. And it's not, I mean, you can't buy your way on the team. You have to perform. So once you make a team, they work hard. I mean, those kids have been practicing every week, 2 times a week since December.
Yeah.
Really fun to leave the house at 8:00 at night in a snowstorm to go up to the Sparta Dome in Crown Point and practice for 2 hours. But that's what we do all winter. And hope my kids are growing out of that now. But actually they'll be driving themselves pretty soon.
Yeah.
But as far as what am I doing for the program, again, I just took it over. Got great numbers. Got 31 kids out. Some of that is because of my connection with the kids in football, and some of them that maybe they said they wouldn't have played, except I'd coached them and they knew me, and so that makes you feel good.
Absolutely.
And another one of my assistant coaches is Curtis Finney. Curtis he's a full-time meat cutter, so he adjusts his schedule. His work lets him adjust his schedule during season. So he goes to work at 3 a.m. to get all of his stuff done at the store. So he can drive 50 miles down here and practice every night. And he does football and wrestling and junior high wrestling and now baseball. And the guy just brings an enormous amount of energy. Kids love him. They really do. So he coaches defensive backs and I think wide receivers on varsity football.
Yeah.
So we really like Curtis, and he's trying his goal. He's while working, he's taking his online education. He wants to be a teacher, and he wants to be full time at the school. He'll be a great asset. But so again, just having good people around. And Bob Gonzi's been out there over 30 years, 35 years or so. Everybody knows him.
Yep.
So I think all of those factors contributed to the numbers that we got this year. And I didn't cut. That's what that athletic director asked if I was going to cut. We discussed it a little bit. No, I don't believe at our level school that we should be cutting anyone if we can figure out how to make it work. So I've asked the athletic director to find some more games. 2 of our conference opponents have dropped their baseball program this year. They didn't get enough numbers out to field a team. So I really don't know how it's going to shake out for the conference yet. And, we've got 31 kids. So we're going to end up picking some games up at the bigger schools. I mean, you got to go north. Munster's looking for freshman games. Cherryville, Maryville, Crown Point, all those places, Valparaiso. They've got B, C, D teams. I mean, they're looking for lots of games, and they don't really care who they play. So we don't have to have all freshmen or an all JV squad. We can kind of put some stuff together. So and Bob Gonzi's on board with that, trying to make sure, and he gets it. He's like, I'll take the JV. He's like, I don't want all the head coach responsibilities. I've done that before. I don't want to deal with ordering stuff. I don't want to deal with all that. He's like, but would really like to work with the JV guys. So made my life a lot easier. There's a significant difference between some of the just starting out JV squad guys and our guys that are full varsity ready. So I feel like my job's easier than his. So I don't. You're always working fundamentals. You're always talking about things, footwork. Getting your body set. Pointing your toe at the bait. All the things you want to teach a kid on how to throw a baseball. You never stop doing that.
Yeah.
But he's got a little more work cut out for him than I do on the individual squad level. So
yeah, I want to go back to travel ball really quick. So a guy I work with, his kid plays travel ball for Crown Point. My oldest is in travel ball. This is first year doing travel ball for Lowell. what do you have to tell parents that are considering or maybe on the fence, or what do you think about that? What would you tell them for some advice?
It's not for the weak of heart. My ex-wife and I are not exactly on the same page on this. I probably before doing it was not in favor of it, and we put a lot of effort into trying to find a league that the kids could go to after Little League that could be competitive, and they would have some success, and we just couldn't find one, and that's what everyone kept telling, you're going to have to do a travel ball league. And so I'm pretty apprehensive when I went into it. It's a commitment. I mean, it's a financial commitment. You need to really vet the program you're looking at, really before you sign that contract, you make sure you understand the schedule.
Yeah.
Because, there's a couple coaches out of Crown Point that they want to be in the World Series every year, which means they can only go to certain tournaments, and they're not in Crown Point. I mean, they're in Louisville and Denver and Orlando. And so I had a friend of mine, and one of the reasons I was really scared of travel ball, his son was on one of those teams. Starting at 8 years old, They were on a team where they signed a contract with this coach that said, if you give me your sons, I guarantee I will place every one of them in a Division I full scholarship program. So invest a little bit now every year, and you'll have a full ride to college. And so they won the World Series. They did all that stuff, but they were gone.
Yeah.
They got 1 weekend from the time school let out till it started again. They got 1 weekend off. They went to like 16 tournaments. He told me it cost them $28,000 in just travel expenses. That didn't count what it cost for the kid to be in the program.
For 1 year?
For 1 year.
Oh.
One kid, 1 year, $28,000.
Oh.
Yeah, but I mean, where you at this week? Orlando. Where you at? Denver. Where you at? Phoenix.
Wow.
Did you go from Denver to Phoenix? No, I had to come home and work for 4 days. You know, and so ironically, when his son became a sophomore, he said, "Dad, I'm tired of baseball."
Burned him out.
Yeah. So that I'm very cognizant of that.
Yeah.
That you gotta, my kids are 2-sport athletes. I certainly, they've got pressure from their friends and pressure from some other folks to be 3-sport. And we really like the farm life. We like to hunt. We like to fish. We like to do, non-season type activities. And unfortunately, if you add a 3rd sport in high school, your winter's kind of gone then too.
Yeah.
So, and I did football, and then, weightlifted all winter, which is a couple, 2-3 days a week. Then, kind of got a nice break. And then about this time of year, got back into baseball. So that's been my philosophy. But yeah, for the parents that are considering it, it's an investment in your time. I mean, it doesn't have to be. There's parents that pay the bill and drop their kid off.
It's
and another parent hauls them everywhere. And that's fine. Everyone's situation is different. You normally see that in the kid, the player, the ones whose parents are in the stand. And that's an ironic takeaway. I remember in college, first home game, 120 football players all get to dress for the first home game. Had 120 sets of parents there almost.
That's amazing.
And outside of just a handful of kids who maybe came from Washington or somewhere far away, and we had a few inner city kids that had their own stories, but for the most part, every single player that made it to college had parental support, and it really, really set in with me about how important it is to be there for your kid all along the way, good and bad, and just to show them that you care. And a lot of, college is tough. They will just grind you in practice to death for 4 years, and you will never see the field. I was very fortunate. I had a unique talent as a freshman and won the long snapping job as a freshman, and that changed my world.
Yeah.
I went from being like the number 8 linebacker to the number 3 linebacker, because when they travel, they have to take the squad down to 53 guys. So that means on the travels team, I moved up just as a de facto. I was going to be the long snapper, so now I'm on all the special teams. Now, if the game is a runaway one way or the other, I get some reps on varsity out on the field as a freshman. And as a sophomore, I moved in kind of that number 2 spot at linebacker, and I was on every single special team. And by the time I was a junior, I was a starter. So I was one of 3 guys in my freshman class to letter all 4 years.
That's legit.
But wasn't good. No one wrote any books about me or anything, but I put the time in and got a lot of great memories. A lot of great friends out of the deal. So
just being a college athlete, student athlete, right? That's just a tough job.
Yeah, Valpo, there's no cutting corners there. I remember my freshman year, I had just talked to a friend of mine. She was our class valedictorian, and she was down at Purdue, and called her up. I said, "Well, how's class going?" She goes, "I don't know. I don't have a test for another 2 weeks. So I haven't been to class for a while." I'm like, "We haven't been to class." Like, well, you only go on the day. You got a syllabus. You only go on the day they have tests. So I remember sitting in my dorm room. I didn't have anything going on. There was no reason I couldn't go to class. But I thought, by God, I'm going to skip class too. Never skip class where I'm just going to skip it and see what happens. About 20 minutes after my class was over in my dorm room, and back then we didn't have cell phones, so my kids wouldn't understand this, but the phone was attached to the wall and it had a cord, and it rang, and I picked it up, and it was my professor, and she says, "Are you ill?" I said, "Yes, I am." She says, "Well, I've pulled your schedule and I've talked to your counselor, and between football and your classes, I see you've got an hour and a half tomorrow between this time and that time, so I'm blocking that out for you to come to my office, and I will give you my lecture one-on-one."
Oh, wow.
So I didn't skip any more classes because that's really intimidating to sit in a room face-to-face with a professor. She gives you a full hour and a half lecture. But Valpo was very, very stingent. You could miss 2 classes with no penalty. If you missed a third class, it was an automatic one-letter grade deduction from your grade point average. And if you missed the 4th class, it was an automatic fail.
Wow.
Like you had to have a lung transplant or something, miss 4 classes. So
wow.
Didn't miss very many classes.
Wow. So circling back to trying to get the youth engaged and I'm tying this back to like the pipeline you're talking about with the JV football program and setting that up for success for high school. Are you going to run any youth camps or anything like that?
This summer gets so short.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that, actually I was just thinking about some of the issues of me coming in late like I have, and not that, this isn't a job that I've sat around thinking about forever, that I just got to have that job. And when I get it, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. So no, to be honest with you, I haven't put any thought into organizing something like that. But I will say there are a lot of really great camps that happen. We're very fortunate to be surrounded by, Purdue University and IUPUI and all these different universities. They do some things. And then, through these travel ball associations, those associations put on some really good camps. And I'm getting a lot of that data and information coming to me, both because my kids are on a team and now, as I had no idea, once you become a head coach, the amount of stuff that starts showing up in your email. So yes, that's something that I probably need to look into and figure out and help kids get into. Guess we'll find out here in a few months whether or not I'm going to be asked back to do this again.
Well, it sounds like you're qualified for sure. And, something that happened in Nebraska, and you should have seen the look on my boys' face when they got to go, or my oldest anyways, the University of Nebraska at Lincoln, they brought their baseball players in to, we're talking a town of maybe 1,000 people. And there's over 100 kids at this camp, right? And it was $50-$60 to go. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I was wondering, like, are you going to try and bring any of that in or anything?
Well, ironically, I was actually thinking about this. We don't do a good enough job out at North Newton. And a lot of the reasons, there's just a lot of the folks that are running the place out there, really good people. I don't, this is my comment I'm about to make has got nothing to do about the people who are there. It's just that there's a kind of a disconnect with a lot of the history out there. And, I got a chance to play with a guy who signed a major league contract. And one of my idols when I was a 5th or 6th grader here at Morocco Elementary was going out to school to watch a guy named Bernie Doyle play. And Bernie Doyle was class 88, amazing athlete, could have gone to any school in the country to play football or baseball. Instead, he signed, I think with the Red Sox, he signed a major league contract. And after his last baseball game, there was a bus or a limo or something waiting. He walked off of a high school baseball field, got on that, and the next day he was in a major league uniform.
Wow.
He ended up, his career got cut short with an injury, I think. But so he actually reached out to me. he's been a big supporter of North Newton. He comes to our fundraiser every year, our golf outing fundraiser, which I've been helping organize now for about 6 years. Brings a team. He usually played with my former coaches, Coach Knutson, Coach Atwood, and those guys. But he reached out, and today he runs a clinic for elite athletes, and he's a personal trainer for elite athletes that are trying to get to the next level, and he's a scout for the I think he said the Texas Rangers. And he offered, he's like, anytime I'm available, I'll be glad to come up and help you. And I'm like, I will take your help all day long. But I just remember as a kid, just watching Bernie play, and just his team, they went to semi-state. They were that's the closest that North Newton's got to the big dome is semi-state, and to my knowledge. But so there's a guy that signed a major league contract. And then I think after he came out of the majors, he went and finished his college degree. I think he played football for a little bit. But guy I played with, Kevin Rayford, and he's had 2 sons graduate already. His daughter, Sydney Rayford, is a phenom. She signed her letter of intent, I think, to play at North Carolina State or something like that, which a former classmate of ours is the head coach down there, Winkler. But Sydney is just an unbelievable athlete. She got all the best qualities out of her mom and her dad. She looks just like her mom, and she's got her dad's arm. So Kevin, I was my senior year, I caught Kevin in the sectionals, and his first 3 pitches he threw over at KV were over 100 mile an hour.
Ooh, he's throwing some heat right there. He
was, yeah. So he got a chance. He spent a couple years in the minors. He didn't get the call, but he got the experience and did all that. He got a nice signing bonus, I think, and but baseball takes a lot of flyers on a lot of guys, and you got to really stand out to get the call there. That's kind of one of the reasons my boys, we sat down and about a year ago, and I was like, do you really think you want to play a sport in college? And both of them, yeah, absolutely, Dad. I said, well, let me tell you, basketball is going to recruit like 6 to 8 guys a year for an entire college team. Baseball is going to recruit maybe 30. Said football is going to recruit 60 to 80. Mm-hmm. I said, so just statistically speaking, where do we think our best chance is? And I said, and on the basketball front, we got a few things going against us. We're not very tall. We don't jump very high, So not too many, which there's certainly some 5'10" point guards out there doing really well. But
they're rare.
They're rare. So I think they both kind of bought in on, we probably should focus our efforts over here. And I'm like, thank God, because I hate basketball.
Yeah, me too. We align on that. I
don't hate it. I watched the Purdue game today. I mean, I don't hate it, but you're not going to catch me just watching endless games that I don't have some connection to. So
yeah, you're not going to find me spending hours on the couch or in the garage watching TV that has basketball on it, and it drives a couple of my coworkers crazy. But I never played it. I played it in junior high, right? Yeah. But after that, it was no interest. But no, it's fun.
They used me with my 5 fouls. So
that is exactly what I did.
I was sent in for at least 5 plays.
Yeah.
And then,
go take that person out. Yeah, for sure. Well, I'll ask you a pretty lighthearted, fun question. Who's the one team you have to beat this year?
Unfortunately, I don't know that much about our conference, and the thing about the 1A deal is per class, if you look at it, we talk about this in football a lot. In 1A, if you've got 3 standout athletes on your team, you're going to be really, really good. And I think that's probably true in baseball too, and maybe even baseball less. But if you got one really good pitcher and a couple of guys that can hit and get around the bases, you're going to be really competitive. And the difference between 1A and even 2A or 3 or 4A is, those guys have a much bigger feeder system, and they're putting 8 or 9 athletes out there all the time. So the chances of their team fluctuating as much is going to be way less than us at 1A. If you graduate your entire starting lineup, you might have 3 years before you get that many athletes back again. But I think, just from what I've seen so far, we've got a really good group of kids. Again, that freshman class I told you about that showed up on the football team. We've got a really, really strong freshman class. I think we got 7 kids out, and 5 of them play travel ball, and they they stand out. I mean, it's obvious with their footwork and their mechanics and things. And, one of the things that travel ball really encourages is that you go get private lessons on hitting and throwing. And so almost every kid in travel ball is getting, in addition to their 2 or 3 practices a week, they're getting another day of private instruction somewhere along the line. And I did that with our boys for a couple of years just to, kind of learn the proper technique of how to, line your feet, your shoulders, your hips, and, get everything going in the right direction. So this is a really long answer to, I have no idea who in our conference or even on our schedule. I think was it Ileana last year. I know the girls went to state. Did the boys as well, I believe. I
don't know. I know the bus came through town last year right at Beaver Fest after they won. So
yeah,
it was cool.
Yeah. So, but yeah, North Newton, of all of the sports, baseball's probably been our most consistent sport, without me just really pulling out all the records. Just haven't really seen the fluctuations. And Coach Gonzi says it all the time. He's like, the one thing that we do well here at North Newton is play baseball, and I think that is a directly attributable to how hard each of our little towns and communities work to make sure there's some type of local baseball program. And really that's about the last thing that we have that the towns and everything are really unified on, is making sure there's a summer baseball and softball league. And I think it definitely shows up out to high school. That helps.
Yeah, the school or the town just rallied behind the local program here, right? Supporting that and covering some of that, or all of the cost, actually. So it's pretty special.
Yeah, well, for folks who aren't native to Newton County and understand all the histories, if you've driven down 114 Rensselaer, you've seen that giant landfill out there, and over the last 25 years or so, it's been there longer than that, but the last 25 years we've been negotiating different we call them good neighbor agreements. So each town and each township in the county gets a certain amount of money each year from the landfill. So it lets them have the freedom to do some things with the youth sports programs. And 25 years ago, as a county commissioner, that was the entire intent of us setting up that good neighbor agreement, was to make sure all these communities had some cash to make sure the kids who come from the places that and the homes that couldn't afford a baseball mitt or shoes or a jersey or any of that stuff, that they didn't have to worry about. They could at least play baseball in their town league and in grade school. So
yeah, it's fantastic. All right, last question I got on youth sports for you. What do you want to ensure people know about the program?
That we're all new. We're going to make a lot of mistakes. I'm sure of that. Got the rule book in my truck. Tend to read. They've sent me to all these mandatory meetings, and I keep thinking I'm going to leave there enlightened, and we've yet to cover any of the questions that I have. So I've got some reading there before our first game. And, the rules of baseball are pretty basic and pretty simple and pretty universal. It's just questions I have about, how many times can I sub a kid, or how many trips to the mound, So just some things that can get you in trouble. And with the wrong umpire, I need to get brushed up on that stuff. I want to say we got some really good kids. One of the things I was talking about earlier was, we built that junior high program from 17 kids the first year to 36 this year, in 3 years. And when the grades came out, one of the things I'm really anal about, I guess, is making sure our kids are making grades. And we had 17 out of that 35 kids were on the A honor roll, and like another 10 were on the AB, or 10 on the straight A and 17 on the AB honor roll. And I only really had 2 kids I had to get a little special help for to make sure. And we didn't have a single kid not eligible after the first 9 weeks this year. So really, really proud of that.
Absolutely.
I hope to carry that same thing over the baseball program. One thing's very different though in football. The day one, everybody puts a helmet on, and I tape their name on their helmet. So within a week, I know everybody's name.
Who they are.
Baseball, these kids show up dressed like hobos and like trying to figure out who is who every day. And I'm getting there. I'm down. I got about 6 kids left that their name's not coming to me right away. But 31 kids, and I think I've seen them 9 times now. So we're getting there. And then basketball was going on for the first winter workouts. Only about half the guys were coming, so I wasn't seeing all of them.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier I was a political science major, so again, I got out of college, got the chance, kind of on a whim and a bet, but nonetheless, I ran for county commission. I got it, and I sort of just stayed in that arena for a while and got a chance to travel to Washington, D.C. several times, do some lobbying. I've spoke in front of the entire state house a couple times. I've been down to testify in front of committees and things, and people would always remark, how do you remember that guy's name? You really need to remember your senator's name or the governor's name or the governor's assistant or whomever you meet along the way. But if you can associate a person with something else, like if you got 2 or 3 points to reference something, like either where they're from or what a hobby is or favorite food or where you met them or something, it seems like I can remember the name better. But just to have a random conversation and like, it may take me 10 times to remember your name. So
yeah, I'm a face person, not a name person.
I remember faces. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's great. Well, I appreciate that. And if you need anybody to throw BP practice and I'm available, call me.
Every day. Come on out.
All right. Let's talk farming a bit. If you're in the market or thinking about switching to lithium batteries, you have to go check out Dakota Lithium Batteries. I installed a 36-volt set of batteries for my trolling motor and installed their cranking battery for the motor. These things are a game changer. They have batteries for solar equipment, golf carts, cars, boats, the duck blinds, and much more. Dakota Lithium Batteries are also backed by an 11-year warranty. For more information, go check them out online or give us a call at 308-379-8280. Looks like you and your family have a pretty decent amount of land that you farm, and sounds like it's kind of generational.
Yeah. I mean, we haven't gone without our bumps in the road. When I got out of college, we farmed about 700 acres, and we had 7 cows, I think. And my dad, he passed away in 2018, but before him, his father, Webb, who was my grandfather, and until the day he died, my favorite person on the entire planet, he died my freshman year in high school, but actually during baseball season. But like I said, I always knew I wanted to farm. My dad was the youngest, and my mom's the youngest of her family. She didn't come from a farm owning family. Her father had been a farm laborer, but my dad's grandfather had owned quite a bit. My dad's father, my grandfather, owned a lot of land over the years, and he had divided his land up and helped all of the older brothers kind of get started. And my dad was one of 9, so I think 5 of the brothers farmed at one point in time. My grandpa had helped them all get started. But I mean, my dad was born in 1949, and his eldest brother was in World War II.
Yeah.
So, I mean, think about that. His eldest brother had gone to the war, came home, got married, and had 2 kids before my dad was born.
Wow.
So very, very different things. So, actually, the hand-me-down clothes that my dad wore were actually his nephews.
Wow. Sounds like my wife's situation.
Yeah.
She has similar, for sure.
Yeah. So in 1956, my grandpa, he's originally from Paducah, Kentucky, but in 1956 they bought the farm. It's kind of our home farm now. And when I got out of college, we had that and rented with the rented land and everything, about 700 acres. And I got a chance my first year out of college to rent some ground from the Nature Conservancy owns it now, but a couple sections up there came available. Knew the right person at the right time. We got a chance to rent some ground. So for us, that was a huge deal to go from 700 acres to 1,700 acres in a year. It was just unheard of. Like, wow. And then another neighbor, an elderly gentleman, and his family, my dad had known them forever. And I had been going over and helping them through college. And he came and told Dad that they were going to retire and wanted to know if we wanted to rent that farm. And that was about 1,100 acres. So, yeah, we went. In the first 4 years after I was out of college, we went from 700 acres to 4,000.
Wow.
And I remember my dad and I basically at that time said, boy, if we had 4,000 acres, each of us would have 2,000 that we could farm, and that would just be all that we ever needed. Life would just, times were pretty tough back then, and you had to try to figure a $10 to $20 an acre profit is what you had to try to live off of, and that wasn't very much, so we got into the dairies started to build then. So in 2001, we got an opportunity to do some custom work up here at what was then known as Fair Oaks Dairy. So that was really what allowed me to stay on the farm. Got married, gave us the kind of the income we needed to be able to be full-time farmers. My mom had always sold crop insurance. My dad had always sold seed. So that was sort of their addition to the farm, that in the lean years, they could live off of that. And in the good years, you pay for the years that were lean.
Yeah.
And we grew pretty substantially until 2012, and had a really bad drought in 2012. And we had to go through some restructuring and do some things quite a bit different. And that was by 2015 or 16, my dad had pretty much kind of retired. And so we were restructuring and getting going. And now 2025. So it seems like we're still restructuring and getting going. But things are going. Yeah, we've grown the cattle herd from what used to be 7 cows to now we got about 550 mama cows. And we finish out all of their offspring. So that puts us at about 1,100 of our own animals. And then we'll custom feed, and we buy some stockers and things. So, at a maximum capacity, we're probably around 1,500 head for a period of time each year.
So you say finishing them out, you're talking to butcher weight, slaughter weight?
Yeah. Yep. When they leave us, they go get jobs at either McDonald's or Arby's, maybe St. Elmo's if they're lucky. So
yeah. Right on. Do you grain finish or?
Yeah, we're a full complete ration.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, no grass fed, but some of the things in the farming world, especially the livestock world, that always get me is the headlines. No hormones, no antibiotics, all these things, and that's actually a law. You can't put antibiotics in an animal and then butcher it. They all have a withdrawal period. They all have things that you have to do by law for consumer safety, and a big penalty if you don't abide by the laws. So great advertising for the folks who say that, but
just reality.
If you buy animal meat in the store, by law it can't have those things in it, and without repercussions if they find that you've done something improper.
Right before my wife and I moved here, we had a massive ranching operation. It was 11 cows that we were trying to fatten out. And
are you from Nebraska?
Yeah. So we just moved out here last November, actually. So been here a little over a year now.
Well, this probably seems like a big town then from Nebraska. Huh?
It is, actually. Yeah. So everybody's like, why would you move here to such a small town? It's like, we came from a town that we lived in the country, but the town that was closest was about 360 people, right? And I love it. Like, smaller the better, in my opinion. And
I mentioned we had a custom harvesting business, so we did all the mowing of hay and chopping of silage, and at one time we ran. I had 45 full time folks and about 80 seasonal, 35 semis, and all the headaches that you can imagine that go with trying to harvest a lot of crops in a hurry. And so I bought some used equipment out in Greeley, Colorado.
Oh yeah, familiar. I used to work there.
Yeah, and loved it. I mean, what's the motto? There's more cows, chickens, and pigs inside city limits than there are people, or something. And when you pull in, you're well aware it's an animal livestock town for sure. But anyways, we bought this equipment, and we brought it all the way from Greeley, Colorado, back down Highway 36, which went through every single small town in the world. And we stopped in this little town in Kansas one night, and mom and pop motel, literally you go ring the doorbell, and they're sitting on the couch, and they came out and got us some room keys, and we walked down the street, go past the Zenith store and the hardware store, and all of these things that had died in our towns when I was a little kid, and they're still alive. And this is probably like 2010. Went to the one little diner, and it was completely packed with all local folks. I mean, it was packed. And we walk in, and I'm a decent sized person, but I had a couple. The two guys that worked for me that were along, they were as big as me or bigger.
Okay.
So we made an entrance, to say the least, and all of a sudden there's probably 60, 70 people in this little diner. You could hear a pin drop.
Ever seen one of them broke their neck looking at you?
Just could hear a pin drop. We walked in like, oh no, this will one of two ways, And of course the ringleader, he gets up. He had been overserved at that point, and he kind of walks over and says, "Y'all ain't from around here, are you?" I'm like, oh boy. I've had this conversation before, and sometimes it goes good, sometimes it doesn't. And And he says, well, welcome, and then Hexling, before we knew, we'd met the mayor and everybody else, it's just an awesome little town. I had a great little meal and a couple beers, and I'll never forget. I'd like to find that place again sometime, but they exist out west. They're still, I've knocked around Oklahoma and parts of Texas and things before, and those towns that are so cut off from the rest of the world, the ones Hillary Clinton affectionately called the flyover states. They have a lot of great things going on. They have community.
Yeah, that's a pride thing for me. I enjoy being from a flyover state.
Right. Yeah,
I really do. And that what you just described is a little community that we came from, and I love it. It's a great place to live and raise a family, and nothing wrong with that.
No, and the Dollar Generals of the world, and I don't know, the play on that term of all these different stores are coming back to communities. That I didn't know how I felt about them at first, but last evening after I was leaving town, we're coming through town about 5:30 or so. People are getting off work, and school functions were ending, and that little store was busy again.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to have a mom and pop grocery store years and years ago here, and that it was busy. Actually, at one time, this little town had 3 grocery stores.
Wow.
That was the big one. It was called Allen's. It was a big grocery store, but then we had the Minute Shop, which had it was famous because it had a slurry machine. You could go in there and get a purple slurry, and you could get a Glow Pop, and that was where all the kids went all summer long. They go to the pool and they walk to the Minute Shop. You go back to the pool, and then they had groceries, and then we had a couple other folks you could get your basic groceries in town. And at one point, we lost all of them. We didn't have a single thing here. So I guess thank you, Dollar General.
Yeah, it's a game changer for this
and Family Dollar.
Opinion,
yeah. We went from 3 to none to now we have 2. So very interesting.
You got a Casey's coming in hot. It looks
Casey,
like.
yeah, that's that'd be interesting as well. That's also that's an Illinois family business, but nonetheless a family locally owned type
Midwest,
establishment.
right?
So yeah.
That's exciting. I don't have a ton of farming questions, but anybody that's been to Nebraska, and it sounds like you drove through at least, there's irrigation pivots everywhere.
Yep.
You move out here, you could play slug bug. There's so few irrigation pivots. I'm curious. So in Nebraska, the challenge is trying to make money while you're paying for water and running a generator or whatever to pump water. Out here, it seems like you get so much rain that you got to try and find a way to get it off your field. What are this is a very selfish question. What are your challenges out here as a farmer?
Well, again, weather, almost the opposite things in the spring that, you deal with in Nebraska. Nebraska, I think, gets somewhere between 8 and 9 inches of rain, and where you're talking about the irrigated parts.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that Platte River Valley that, they're sucking out of that aquifer.
Yep.
And, they've seen a pretty steady decline in the amount of rainfall out there for several years. So that's caused the state in the last 4 or 5 years to put in pretty strict water rights, and you can only remove what you received the previous year. So if you were in a drought last year and say you only got 4 inches of rain, the most water you can pump on your farm is equivalent to 4 inches. So to put things in perspective, we get 44 to 48 inches of rain here. We have an aquifer that basically stretches from Lake Michigan to, well, it's huge. Then it eventually ties into the Taze River. The Taze River runs through Benton County, but it actually comes out of an ancient river that was covered up by the glaciers that drains out of the Appalachian Mountains or something crazy. So I've got a friend that's got a well down in Benton County that they literally put a well in 60 feet deep, and there's so much positive pressure that this thing flows 450 gallons a minute just off of the pressure in the ground. They don't have a pump on
There's
it.
no pump.
Right.
Wow.
And that's not everywhere. That's a pretty unique thing. So we irrigate here. I have irrigators. I've got about 1,000 acres of irrigated land. Before 2012, I had about 10,000 acres of irrigated land. You get up through the old lake bottom, which familiar with Newton County, we got the old Beaver Lake, and it kind of extends all the way into the Kankakee watershed. We don't have a lot of clay underneath our topsoil. So because it was lake bottom, a lot of that clay gets sifted out over time. So our subsoil doesn't hold moisture very well in places. So in that really August time frame when the water table drops, August, September, irrigation, it can be beneficial. But yeah, for the most part, you're just farming around the darn thing from April, May, and June, usually parts of July. A lot of times I wouldn't even think about firing our irrigator up till the 20th of June or something, where I know out west they have to run it just to have enough moisture to get their crop to sprout.
Yeah.
So, and kudos to those guys out there. We have the luxury of having most people here in the Midwest over irrigate something terribly, thinking that, we've got to put all this water on.
Yeah.
When really 1 to 2 inches, maybe 3 inches of strategically placed water is more than you need.
Yeah.
And, those guys out there are trying to figure out how to get by with, basically putting all of the water the crop needs on and knowing exactly when to do it and how to not lose a drop of it.
Yeah.
We have the luxury of just, oh well, I'll just run the pivot again tomorrow. There's no penalty for it. We do some wells. You got to report to the DNR. They do monitor, but you don't have to get a permit, as far as a license or anything. You're not regulated by water use because we use so much less than we naturally get.
Yeah. I recall a year that my neighbor literally had to run his pivot just to go plant.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's how dry it was, and tough times for sure.
Yep.
So for the sake of time, I'm going to ask you 2 questions and one about cattle, and then we'll move on to a different topic here. So in Nebraska, usually you see a farm and there's some cows around, like it's pretty common. Drive around here locally, don't see a ton of cattle. So I'm curious, where's your pasture ground and where are you getting hay at around here?
Right. Yeah. So we intentionally graze, and we really don't even graze. So we've converted. We're one of the probably only farms around here in the last 50 years that has taken farm ground out of production, fenced it, and we're raising cattle at a density at about 8 cows per acre, which really cracks me up. I have a really good friend in Fort Stockton, Texas, and he has 135,000 acres in one pasture. So to put that in perspective, 135 square miles. That's what it is. To put that in perspective, we have 630 square miles in this county. So in theory, his one pasture is the same size as 1/4 of Newton County.
Yeah.
Or so, thereabouts.
Right.
And, he hires a guy to grade his roads once a year, and the bill is for 300 miles. And this is just on his pasture, right? So on this enormous pasture, him and his father split it. They run 500 cows. Yeah. They run 8 cows per 4 sections. So he comes and visits me about once a year. We get in the pickup truck, and I can make a 2-mile lap around the house, and I can show him 1,000 head of cattle, all out on green pasture. And he's like, it just blows his mind, So I've been to his farm, his ranch, hunting 2 or 3 times, and there's a lot of times we'll go 2 days without seeing a cow.
Yeah,
hunt all day long, nonstop, and no clue where these 8 cows are hiding in 2,400 acres.
Yeah.
Crazy. So yeah, we've converted. We got a couple hundred acres of pasture, basically adjacent to our home farm. We've got a couple other farms that we rent that we've got some pasture on. But we'll gestate our cows in our buildings, and basically after they calve, they'll go out on pasture. So we're kind of hot bedding it, if you will. Once that cow has 6 months, the calf is 6 months old, she gets weaned. Or he or she gets weaned, and the cow comes back in the barn, and then a new mama and baby will go out there. We calve year round.
Yeah.
Part of that is not by design. It's that we've been taking some opportunity the last 3 years, going out into Kansas and Oklahoma and places that have been having extreme drought, and we've got some buyers out there that work through a mutual buyer that I use. And they'll locate cow herds that are being sold because they just simply, the drought has forced them out of pasture.
Yep.
And feed. There's just a point where you can't afford to buy feed anymore. So they're supposed to be cull cows. We thought we were buying open cows, and we found out we're averaging 46% of bred.
Wow.
So you buy,
that works out.
Yeah. I think we bought 380 last year, and so we got 200 bred cows out of the deal. So we'll calve those out, and honestly, a lot of those are the you're always going to sell your roughest cows first, so they're not for the most part really top. And not we did get a one load of cattle that had come out of a complete herd liquidation, so there were some really good quality cows that we're hoping to get a good decade out of.
Nice.
But for the most part, we get a live calf on the ground and take care of that, and then we'll make a decision whether we're going to keep the mom for multiple pregnancies or not. So
yeah, mostly Angus, or
we shoot for Angus. The market, the premium market's really all black. So you can get all black with a couple different breeds, but all Angus bulls, and we work strictly with the Lens genetics. They're kind of new to the industry, but they've rocketed to the top really fast. So I bought eight. No, that we actually buy bulls. We'll sync our herd, meaning that we'll give them shots like we were going to artificially inseminate, but basically that just allows the cows to all come in to heat at the same time, and then we'll turn a whole bunch of bulls out into pasture at one time. A bull can cover about 3 cows a day, and her heat could last, and they're not going to heat exactly at the same time. So if we do it just right, we can catch 2/3 of the herd in about a week, and so then each pasture we try to keep calving dates pretty tight, and sometimes we do our math wrong and we drop 28 calves on January 1st. But
a buddy of mine in Nebraska, they sell bulls. If you need a contact, I got a guy. They got some good looking bulls.
Oh yeah.
All right, let's shift gears one last time here. I know you got plans you got to get to, so I don't want to keep you too late here.
I'm good till 1:45 a.m. when we got to head to the airport.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So let me speed this up for you. So one thing that is a really, really hot button topic around here right now is the North Newton School District. I'm new to town. I am genuinely curious. Somebody that's a lifelong resident. What are your concerns as not only a resident that's been here lifelong, alumni, but have kids that are in the school district?
Yeah. It's troubling. All my years in politics, I always looked at my role, whether as a commissioner or a councilman, or even when I was president of the Indiana Corn Growers and things like that. I always looked at my job as trying to look at the board or that entity as a business, and things that stand out in a business that say it's being run successfully is employee retention. That's huge.
Absolutely.
Employee retention usually equals happy employees. Happy employees, that's contagious. That's usually they attract other employees that want to be happy. They do things naturally that are contagious to your entire business model. So big red flag when you look at that, we're just really struggling to keep superintendents. And so now I did some research on the guy that we just hired. I didn't know. I've met the outgoing superintendent a couple times, and she seems like a nice person. But we as a school district, and this isn't my opinion. This is my research and talking to other superintendents in the area, talking to other folks kind of in the school business about our situation in North Newton. We've just got a bad stigma here, and good qualified people won't apply here right now. And it doesn't matter if you're a teacher or a principal or a superintendent candidate. They want to go places where it's a good work environment, where it's hard to get in, because there's a line. When school starts this fall, we'll probably have 6 or 8 spots not filled, maybe 10. And we hire a lot of people under the Emergency Rules Act that they came out with. I don't know when, but which means, you don't have to be a licensed teacher. You don't have to have a lot of different things. And you can, state of Indiana, you can teach an entire year, which there are good people doing that. It's not about the people. It's just about the fact that that's just, we're operating on survival mode.
Mm-hmm.
And, secondly, we kind of had a superintendent and a treasurer who I think were good qualified people, but they didn't prioritize special activities, sports, extracurriculars. They didn't prioritize that stuff in the budgeting process. They made it very, very difficult for, athletic teams to have funds to buy equipment or stuff, and that trickles down to the kids. So now not only do we have a problem at the highest level in, superintendent retention, teacher retention, principal retention. We now have a problem with player retention.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to go play on a team when they don't think the school cares about them. And that was the very first thing I heard day one 3 years ago when I came as junior high coach was school doesn't want sports, school doesn't like us, school this, school that. The school board won't support us, and it wasn't coming from the players. It was coming from the coaches. Some were teachers, some weren't, that were repeating adult stuff in front of kids. And so one of the first things I do, I kind of nip that in the bud. I'm like, okay, not disagreeing with you, but we're not going to talk about this in the locker room in front of the kids. Kids need to be kids.
Time and a place.
Kids need to be kids. I don't need seventh graders worried about whether the school board wants to buy them helmets or not. Let us adults deal with that stuff. So those are all the issues. Then we've got school board members resigning and then not resigning. We've got school board members who have their own agendas. It's all of our own fault. When I was a kid, the school board was made up of a banker and a couple business owners and folks who ran businesses and had employees and had everyday working understanding of what it's like to make a payroll, to negotiate your insurance, to interview an employee and ask the good questions, understand when your employee's not doing their job and how to handle it. And nothing against any of our current school board members, but there's not too many of them that have that experience. And, it's the beauty of our government system. The criteria to run for a public office is not very high. You got to be 18 and not a felon and a U.S. citizen. And depending on what you're running for, you may not even have to be a U.S. citizen. So they meet all of the basic criteria, but we as an electorate just need to do a better job of vetting our candidates and encouraging folks. And I know I've made some I think you're alluding to some of my Facebook posts and things of late. I'm not trying to get another job. I'm just merely, if you put yourself out there to run for the job, do the best job you can. Don't mail it in,
Yeah.
Pretty sad. And I know the guy, and he's a nice guy. I was at a school board meeting the other night, and he was not even paying attention enough to realize they'd taken a vote. And one of the board members who is ramrodding a lot of the things, good or bad, behind the scenes, just told him how he voted. He's like, "You voted for that," and the board member kind of looked surprised and didn't argue, and that's how it was recorded.
Yeah,
and you just can't have that. I mean, we're in a near crisis here. Our budget's not balancing. Our teachers are all about. I mean, I think they got the teacher contract done, but teachers are about to go on strike. We haven't given any of our non-teaching and support staff a raise in several years. It just goes on and on. And again, starting at the top, if that person isn't happy, if that person's not doing their job, if that person's not, my biggest rub right now is I am a firm believer. This is how I run my company. Always have. I hire you. We agree. I tell you what my expectations are of you, what your job is going to be. Go do it. If I have to sit in the seat next to you, I mean, I understand there's a training period and things like that, but if we're a month into the job and I'm still sitting in the buddy seat, basically doing your job for you, you're just not the right fit. So you trust that you've made the right decision. You turn that person loose. And I have found most people do better in a non-micromanaged situation. I'm not saying as the owner or the boss that you don't need to come in and tweak things, and there's ways to do that. Like, one of my approaches are like, okay, I see what you're doing. I'm not mad about it. It's okay. But I would rather you do it X, Y, or Z. Now, if you have to say that multiple times, then again, we come back to this person may not be the right fit for the job. And even at that point, I still don't blame the employee. I blame myself, because I hired this person. I put them in a position to do something that obviously either A, they're not qualified for, most likely B, didn't want to do.
Yeah.
The number one thing I ask in every single job interview is if you could describe your favorite job in the whole world, what would it be? Because the last, I deal with truck drivers and mechanics and people who want to work with cattle and people who want to work, want to farm. And I think I'm interviewing a guy to be a mechanic, and he tells me his favorite thing in the world to do is to be a truck driver. Well, I shouldn't make him a mechanic then.
Yeah.
Or vice versa. I think I'm hiring a guy that I want to put in a tractor all day long to do tillage, and no, he wants to be chasing cattle. Then that's not a good fit. And you can apply that to any job anywhere. So when you're interviewing these folks for whatever the job may be, especially a superintendent, I would like to know what they want to do, what their goal for our school system is, what their idea of a good principal is.
What's your vision?
What your vision is. What's your outlook on sports? Will you be at the Friday night football games?
Yeah.
I really like our principals out at North Newton. I've got to know them very well. I think Mr. Brooks and Ms. Hines are fantastic. They don't live in Newton County. That's not a rub on them. That's not negative. Nothing. Their kids are not in our school district. Again, that's fine. Free country. Live wherever you want. But on Friday nights, biggest, football is still the biggest draw around in little old Newton County, whether it's North Newton or South Newton game. We don't have any administrators there a lot of times because they're at home in their kid's school district watching their kid compete there. And that's fine. But it can be a problem, in my opinion. There's been issues. I had a player get injured badly. That was the first time I ever thought I've just witnessed kid be paralyzed or possibly dead. And fortunately, he's made a full recovery. But for 20 minutes or so, it was major panic. We had the athletic director there, but we didn't have any major administrator to just kind of fill in the role, and we kind of
be the leader.
Kind of made it up as we went, and we got through it, and we're talking about this summer trying to organize some training with all of our different fire departments, EMS, and hospitals how to handle an event like that again. Just pray it doesn't happen, but all of those things coupled together just tell me our ship is not being steered properly, and you really have to go and say the school board is the one making the first decision. Therefore, I question that. Mm-hmm. And more than that, there's certain board members want to kind of run the whole show, and I know these folks very well, and they're very, very a-personality, micromanager type folks. And no matter who they hire, doesn't matter how good they are, they're going to expect to be able to tell them what to do 24 hours a day, and they're going to have a very, very short attention span for when that administrator pushes back. And everything I know about the new superintendent we hired, he's probably the exact right guy to bring in at this time because he's going to push back, and he's going to attempt to right the ship, and I think that's wonderful. So it's going to be a curious experiment to see if this board can handle that, which means they're going to lose a lot of the power that they think they have, and they really never should have had. It's when you're elected to a position like the school board, that doesn't make you the boss of the principal.
Right.
That doesn't make you the boss of the teacher. That doesn't mean you can go in and tell the janitor what they should be doing. And this board doesn't understand that. They've been able to do that for a long time. Their latest move here was to try to get keys to access the schools anytime they want. Which, on one note, like, I don't really care if you need a key to get in the boardroom, get a key to get in the boardroom. But on the flip side, I know for me to be a coach, the extensive background check I had to go through. I also know it amazes me how many folks that we've had that wanted to coach and couldn't pass the background check. And these are people that we see and work with every day. And you'd have never thought there was some flag in there somewhere. And I'm not going to single anybody out or nothing like that. There was not a specific example, but I've been surprised. So I think the school board should at least submit them some, and I have no reason to believe that they all wouldn't pass the flying colors. But you have, that's the very minimum requirement that we have for anyone. I even have to have I have a dad who's going to volunteer on the baseball team. He had to do the full background check. He had to do all that stuff. He has to go take state tests that all about, proper ways to act around kids. And,
Yep.
he has to be able, we have to take tests on how to look for, trouble at home and mental illness and all these different things that to work with our youth. Well, if you want access to that, if we're required to do that, shouldn't you be?
Yeah. Some challenges then.
Yeah.
So what do you think fixes this?
I really think it's just not micromanaging. Not a single one of those board members has had the training, the education to be a superintendent. I know one of the board members has contacted several lawyers and has worked really hard to prove that we didn't need a superintendent, that the board could just fill that role. And that always works really well when you have 7 people trying to be one boss. So hopefully, and like I said, this guy was hired by the state of Indiana and sent to the Gary School District to fix a board that had been taken over by the state, and was able to get it back on track, get the new board members in, get them trained, and let that thing kind of take off. So
It's kind of a fixer then?
yeah, and my understanding, he works for a consulting company that comes in and does that kind of stuff. Because that was my one question when I was looking him up. I'm like, well, what kind of superintendent is looking for a job in the middle of the school year? You would think all your A players or even your B players are employed. So
Yeah.
what are we stealing them from somewhere? And so the research was, no, he works for a firm that does this kind of work, and that he's a very hands-on guy. I mean, I think he took the job and got a motel room and hasn't left since, is what I understand. So
Cool.
made his rounds to schools, introduced himself to a lot of different folks. So we're getting good feedback from the administrative level. And I think when you get down in the weeds at the schools, at the teacher level and the teachers' aides and the custodials and things like that, they just want leadership. They don't care what the answer is. They want an answer. And we just haven't had that in a long time.
Yeah, I think anybody that's been in business for a while can understand what you're talking about, right? It's the micromanaging versus being a good leader. Provide the training, set some expectations, be accountable, hold people accountable. I think those are.
Yeah, and I think this philosophy comes from being an athlete, being coached, being a coach, being an employer. Is that sometimes you got to let people fail. Being a middle linebacker. There are just times I didn't take the right approach. I didn't have my footwork correct or whatever. And maybe the coach would tell me to do something different. And being a young teenage kid, I always had the answer. No, I don't think I'm going to try it this way. And then eventually realize, okay, maybe I will try it that way. In my job as a boss, I don't want to set someone up to fail. I don't want to set them up, but make a suggestion. Maybe they think they got it a better way. Sometimes they do, and that's great. Their way's better. I'm fine. We all win, but sometimes it's not. Okay, let's revisit the topic. All right, let's try it this way now. And I think some of that, the school board could learn a lot from that approach with some superintendents and things. And again, the outgoing superintendent, everything I know about her is this is a new profession for her, and she walked into not a smoothly oiled machine. It was kind of, there was a lot of holes in the dam, and maybe she would have got them all fixed. Maybe she wouldn't have. We'll never know. But she was put in a tough spot and not treated very well from day one.
Yeah, I tried getting her on the podcast actually a while back because Facebook was eating her up about not being qualified. They weren't aware of the Emergency Act that allowed her to be in the role and to pursue that certificate or, whatever that education is to become eligible to be a superintendent. And I just wanted her to come on and be able to tell her side of the story because, boy, Facebook was brutal.
Yeah, and Newton County is a little unique in that we've always had a very outspoken population in certain communities on all topics, and a lot of times they don't have all the information, and that's not entirely their fault. We just lack. When I was a county commissioner, we had presence of a newspaper and a radio guy at a lot of meetings. So after the meeting, within a few hours, a lot of the minutes and things would be made public.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's coming. I thought it was January 1. I guess it's July 1 now. All the meetings will have to be streamed live somewhere.
Yep.
And that should help some. But, a lot of times folks want to run with a little bit of information, and for whatever reason. One of my last projects I worked on as a county councilman was this GT Sports project coming in, the Marvell Corporation. And people didn't, the headline was Newton County invests in a $96 million sports complex. And no one read the other 15 pages of the article. They just said Newton County's paying $96 million. Where do we get the money? No, Newton County's not paying $96 million at all.
There's one heck of a grant that is.
Yeah. So, and the way we set that up was, and folks need to understand that these types of projects, we're competing. If you want any type of economic development, you're competing with little old Newton County is competing with Lake County, Kankakee, Lafayette, even Monticello. And these towns have real money and and they can offer things that we can't even begin to offer.
Yep. But
what does Newton County have that they don't have? We have land at an affordable price.
Yep.
We have access to I-65. We have now utilities that we can offer. So we have things that offset that. Maybe they go to Lafayette and the same piece of land would have cost them $100 million just for the land or something stupid.
Yep.
And that's, here they're going to get the land in arrangement with the dairy folks up here at a very reasonable price. But they needed some type of local investment to ensure their investors that the county was going to support the project. So smart money is never the first money.
Mm-hmm.
People who invest in these type of projects want to see that the county's behind it. They're not going to give this group a bunch of money and then spend the next 5 years in court arguing with the county for permits.
No.
So without us putting up some seed money, if you will, and we didn't give it to them, it's a loan.
Yep.
It's a loan that we can forgive, but it's a loan as a seed money turning into a grant if they do everything that they say they do. At the same time, the county, we didn't get it done before I got out of office, but I'm well aware that they're working on some taxing revenues that will be very specific to that facility and location that will return about tenfold that $5 million investment over the next 20 years. So pretty small deal. And that doesn't even count, when it's all said and done, there should be 1 million users a year in 5 years. So if 1 million people stop in our county and each spend $20, that's $20 million. I mean, that's twice the whole county budget at the moment for one little location over here. And, we don't have to deal with their kids going to schools or needing busing or, all these other social services that come along with having an influx in population. We will have folks stop, enjoy our county for a day, leave money, and go home. It's literally like a giant toll booth is how I look at it. And took a while for that concept to kind of sink in with some of our county council board members and stuff. And once they did, I really feel like they were behind it.
Well, not to mention the possibility of hotels out there, the jobs that brings, the extra revenue and tax generation. I mean, those are the things that spawn that.
Yeah. I mean, just for instance, Jasper County found out about it kind of late in the game, and they are doing everything they can to try to entice them to build stuff in Jasper County. I mean, they're Newton County is in a fight for its economic life to try to keep this development on our side of the fence. So.
Yeah, no, it's huge, and I think just being the outsider, right, is when I look at this county, it's very uniquely situated. I mean, you're about an hour to Chicago, plus all the small communities that surround that, and then you have Lafayette, not very far away, which is a decent size, brings in a lot of people. And then you also have Indy not far away. I mean, strategically located is how I explain it, right? It's nicely located.
Yeah, it's the same algorithm that people asked 20 years ago, why here? Why are the dairies building here? that exact reason. Within a couple hours, their milk can be delivered to huge populations.
Massive.
And so this Marvell company, the GT Sports, use the same algorithm, and I mean, they all do. All research businesses is you start to draw circles on the map, and each layer you got 10 miles, and you try to figure out what's the center point that would draw the most folks the easiest. And I mean, that spot is huge. It probably 20 years ago was Maryville or Cherville.
Yep.
And I don't, we're also very unique. I don't think we're ever going to see that kind of population growth there in our lifetime, simply because we're an agrarian place, and their investments out there aren't going there for a long time. So that's going to be a natural border to that type of growth. But this is a very healthy growth for us. It's not an industry that is going to be dirty or pollute or bring in vagrants or all of the things you worry about with sometimes industrial type things that are, these are going to be high paying jobs for the most part. There'll be a lot of summer jobs too. That's going to really help our youth population have some stuff. It's going to help our retired population do some things. But it's just a lot of really great synergies about the opportunity to have a sports complex in our community that's going to do. And before my kids were just tying it all together, before I was in travel baseball, I had never thought of the draw of all those things. I mean, I was down at Indianapolis at the, it's Westfield there, a big giant complex. And I started counting up the fields, and then I looked at the tournament schedule. They had 22 fields playing 8 games a day.
Yeah.
Then they had, that wouldn't count the soccer fields or the lacrosse fields or the indoor football fields. I mean, there's like 17,000 athletes were going to compete in one weekend, and they do that like 40 weeks a year or something. And then you figure it was a play and stay.
Yeah.
So 2/3 of the people are renting a motel room. So I know our 2 nights we stayed down there, we spent $1,000.
Yeah.
Just motel room, 4 or 5 meals,
Yep.
So it doesn't take long.
No, the economic benefits of those things is astronomical. And if you can get a county or a community to support something like that, it'll pay back quick.
Yeah, it really will. Again, it's just a giant toll booth. People stop, give you some money, and go home. They take they take all their problems with them.
Yep. No, it's good. I'm going to ask you one last question. It's pretty pointed, and if you don't want to answer it, that's fine. Are you going to run for school board?
No. Yeah, I think I said earlier that, my interest, my posts, so one thing I've always done, and well, it's not true. My first 4 years as a county commissioner, I was the youngest person ever in the state of Indiana elected the county commissioner. So I got elected right out of college. So 22, 23 years old. Just sat back and kind of followed the lead. Many, many times my soul was saying you should speak up or you should vote against something. And a guy that I got to know and respected very much told me, Matt, it's no good to be the one outlying vote. If just 3 of us, if 2 people are going to vote for something, you should just go along. And I did that, and I've regretted it ever since. And so this round as a county council person, I wasn't on the board very long before I realized there's 2 or 3 people that were really intimidated by one of the board members. And really, I could tell they wanted to speak, they wanted to be heard, but they were just very intimidated and not willing to sort of put themselves out there. And, here I am, 20 years older. I wouldn't say I had a chip on my shoulder, but, I'm almost to that grumpy old man stage. You're like, no, I'm going to say what I want to say, take it or leave it. So one thing I felt really good about after my couple of years on the board, I was kind of able to quell that one aggressive board member and allow everyone to have their voice, and things changed. The board dynamics changed, the focus of some things changed, and I think for the better. I know the compliments I got from fellow board members were them thanking me after the meeting of helping them get their opinion and point made, or seconding their vote or something or their motion helped. So my motivation in kind of pointing out what I see as that same runaway board member trying to trample some folks that are just a little less aggressive, I guess. It's just maybe I can give them a voice, and they're good people. They're getting caught up in all of this stuff, kind of thrown in with the whole bunch, and it's really, sadly, just a couple of folks kind of manipulating a lot of things behind the scenes. So I mean, no, I don't have aspirations to run for school board. That's not why I'm doing it. If the opportunity came, I don't know what I would say to it right now. I mean, I thought after one more year of coaching football, I was going to be done coaching. Here I just stepped into a varsity role that I don't know how long I'll do this. Like I said, they may fire me halfway through the season if we're bad enough. We'll see. So I don't know. I'm not trying to avoid the question.
No, it's fair.
I very much want to be in the process, involved in the process of vetting some new board members. I think going into this primary season that, and I know almost every board member there have some very personal relationships with some of them, have very close mutual friends with some of them, and none of my comments should be taken too overly personal. But gosh darn it, sometimes you're just not the right person for the job, and it's tough to say. I mean, I've had folks work for me that were really good friends, and I've had to let them go. And honestly, those were some of my lessons learned as a young person when I first started managing the company, that it's kind of best not to get real close with some of your employees, because, it changes the dynamic, the boss-employee structure. And it's not to say that the boss is better than or anything like that. It's not what I mean at all. It just, someday you may have to have a tough conversation, and you need to be able to do that, and neither side take something away from it. So please, board members, if you're listening, we're just having a tough conversation, and some of you aren't qualified to be on this board. And the best thing that you could do for your own children and for this county is step aside and let us get some folks on there that have the qualifications, have the business knowledge, have the ability to say what needs to be said and do what needs to be said, and hire the right people and let them do their jobs.
Yeah, no, it's fair. And I'll throw a plug in for Donald Trump really quick. He was a very young man that was being interviewed by a news company at one point, and he was asked if he was going to be president of the United States.
I know the
and
interview. Yep.
That he would only become the president or run if he could add value and make a difference.
Yeah, he said if things got bad enough, I would consider it. And again, it's a board of 7, so it no matter what happens, I mean, we're seeing it right now. One very motivated board member can do a lot of good or a lot of bad, but nonetheless they can steer a lot of the decision making. And I question the morals of this one board member a lot, because I know him very well, and people who know him well, none of us really understand what makes him tick, other than he just really, really has to be in control. And it doesn't matter. I would imagine if you were playing Monopoly with the guy, it'd be the same way. There's just something in that guy that he has to be in control. He has to micromanage, and it just is not. He's just not as qualified to do that as he thinks he is, and I'm okay with letting him know that.
Yeah, went through a lot of leadership training. Literally been doing it pretty hot and heavy for the last 2 years, actually. And one thing that you hear a lot is people don't quit companies; they quit bad leaders, bosses. And I don't know the dynamics. I don't know what it's always been, but that's probably something to sit back and think about if you are on the school board. Is like, why are they actually leaving? Maybe have a couple exit interviews, and because they're going to give you an honest opinion at that point, most likely, and see what the struggles are and try and address them.
Yeah, I mean, I've had some rapport with the last couple, and they always show up with lots of energy and ready to go, and not very far into it. They, I'll start getting the calls like, I don't know what to do. I just, can't. The board board won't let me do my job, or they don't support this, they don't support that. And it takes an equally strong leader at the superintendent position to stand up to that, to stand your ground, have enough self-respect to be able to look your boss in the face and say, I'm sorry, but you're wrong, or I'm sorry, that's not the right way to do something. And, that's ultimately what they would have to do with the school board is and the last few have not had that backbone. They've caved, I guess. And maybe I'm completely wrong and they had no choice, but that's too bad. And unfortunately, quitting has been the easiest route for everybody. So we'll just resign and we'll keep your problems. I'm moving on.
Yeah, which is too bad. That hurts the kids. Well, we're almost at the 2-hour mark. I feel like Joe Rogan at this point. Yeah. I'm going to end this. I'm going to wrap it up here. What do you want to talk about going out of this interview that we haven't touched on, or that you want to make a clarifying comment to, or anything like that?
Well, pleasure to meet you. Honestly, I think you reached out to me maybe a couple of months ago. Didn't recognize the name. No offense.
Yeah,
kind of a small town. So, I appreciate that. I hope I've added some value to your podcast here.
Yeah.
Admittedly, I don't listen to a lot of podcasts, not for any particular reason. Maybe I'll try to find this one.
Yeah.
Keep up with you. My fiance, on the other hand, you mentioned the two brothers there. She listens to them about 24 hours a day, I think.
Yeah.
So, but she doesn't even drink beer, but she buys their garage beer just in case.
Just in case. Yeah.
She thinks. Not Travis, his brother, Jason. Jason has hung her moon for sure. So,
Jason Kelsey.
Yeah. Which he's a really cool guy. They seem to be really good grounded folks. So
he's a class act, I think. I know he's had some spoofs in the media over the last year, but I think if you look back at his track record, he's a solid dude.
Yeah. Both of them interesting story. But as far as what I personally want to leave, everyone has a past. Mine's got plenty of. I'm not a perfect human being. I've made plenty of mistakes. I try to let my players know and the kids I get the opportunity to work with that, life's full of making mistakes, and the trick is to try not to make the same mistake twice, to learn from it the first time, and it could be as simple as messing up fielding a ground ball and then continuing to then throw the ball completely out of the ballpark. So now we've taken one very small mistake and we've made it into a big mistake. And life's the same way. Lots of things come along and we just pour fire or gas on our own fire over and over again. So trying to avoid that and mentor folks out of that. And sometimes I need to take my own advice. But, that's one thing. I'm good at giving advice, but sometimes I need to look in the mirror and listen to myself. So.
Yeah. What you described there, I call that failing forward, right? It's make a mistake that you can come back from and fail forward, right? It's okay to fail. You just got to make sure you're failing forward.
Well, the one takeaway, and so I got the opportunity to give the commencement speak. Ironically, would have been my 10th year out of school. And earlier in that spring, a classmate of mine, Craig Bland, was a police officer, and he got a call for down power lines one early morning and went to investigate and didn't realize that he had parked too close. He got out of the car and was electrocuted. So, I took a lot of that. He and I weren't best friends or anything, but we were close. Small, went to grade school together, went to high school together, graduated together. Knew him my whole life, knew his whole family. His dad delivered fuel to our farm and, his whole life. And so small family, small farm, or small community.
Mm-hmm.
So at that speech, I used a lot of that. You got to live every day like you don't know there's tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
You got to go out there and you got to try things. You got to make the best of every situation. And one of my takeaways was that my college linebackers coach always said, keep your feet moving, keep your head up, and work downhill. Just get out there. And he says, I will never yell at you if you go full speed and make a mistake. He said, but if you're standing there flat-footed watching time go by, I'm going to let you know. I'm going to light you up,
Yeah.
And I've taken that to heart. Like, you're going to do something, Go, you're just do it. Go all in.
Yeah.
My future mother-in-law has already recognized that about me. She says, he doesn't do anything halfway. I'm like, well, I'm either going to do it or I'm not.
Yeah.
Like we're either going to do it or we're not.
Yeah.
Kids decided they wanted chickens, so we built a big chicken coop and we have chickens. You know, and they don't do anything with chickens now. So now we remind them that their chickens need to. But but, so such is life.
No sense in going to the dance if you're not going to dance, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your time. Thanks for taking a leap of faith to come into a stranger's house to do a podcast.
Yeah. No. Other than this heater may have my leg about medium rare, we're pretty good.
Just said something. You could have kicked the power button. No, I appreciate it, man. It's been great to get to know you a little bit, and hopefully we'll see each other around and chat.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to this episode. If you liked what you heard, or even if you didn't, I hope you will like and follow the show and join us next time. If you have someone you want us to talk to or you want to hear from or whatever organization that might be, shoot us an email at nci92@outlook.com. We'll try and get them on the show. Thank you. See you next time.